like going off into oblivion.
All right.
What?
Let's hope this is working.
Open sesame.
All right. So, where we left off, where did we leave off?
Should we let Thomas in?
Oh, put it.
Yes, you should let Thomas in.
We were discussing vocab.
Thanks, Dan.
And we were getting
Whoa.
Jolly Ranchers.
No,
which
ratio.
is just
You asked us questions, we got Jolly Ranchers.
Yeah, but what did I ask you questions about?
Ask us
Just
questions
genetics
about, like-
and heredity and Punnett squares and
Not Punnett squares.
Sorta.
Yeah.
Well-
and the ratio thing.
I like
I'm
heterosexual.
doing 3 to 1.
Okay, so Audrey, are you familiar with Mendelian inheritance?
Genetics.
So, Vikram, can you share with us what the ratio of in a dihybrid cross,
9-3-1.
sorry, in a monohybrid cross, what is the ratio between the dominant and recessive phenotypes?
Dominant and recessive phenotypes would be 3 to 1.
3 to 1 in a monohybrid cross.
So no hybrid.
Okay, what's the phenotype? What is a phenotype, Ansh? No, it's not a percentage, yes.
It's the physical trait, something that you can see.
The phenotype is the physical appearance or the way it's expressed.
Do I get a
Yes.
Jolly Rancher?
Softpick's here. Softpick's name is Softpick, just so you know.
He's also very clumsy.
Ansh, would you please move for them so that they can enter the classroom?
So,
Softpick,
It's
please
a trap.
Thomas.
It's a better place to live.
It's a trap.
Wow.
This is called
he lets you
karma.
win. He lets you win.
Alright, so
He deserves it.
we have a share up here.
Jolly Rancher for answering the question.
Me too.
Can we get Jolly Ranchers?
I'm gonna have
You
to
should have it. Plead the fifth.
Oh my god. Using your amendments.
using my amendments. Okay, so we just went over the fact that a phenotype is the appearance. So what do we call the code for a phenotype? Ansh? The genotype. Okay. So what is Softpick? What is the ratio between phenotypes in a dihybrid cross? Okay, Softpick, can you tell us what a dihybrid cross is?
You can do it.
Two hybrids are crossing.
What is crossing?
Crossing the street.
Together?
They're reproducing.
Okay, good. Alright, Vikram, yeah.
Whoa
So the
there.
ratio is
Seems like better than
3 to 1.
Okay, and what do those numbers represent?
Okay, so 9. So in this case, we have 9 being the round yellow seeds. Out of
Okay, sure.
Okay, 9 round yellow seeds, 3 round green seeds, 3 yellow wrinkled seeds, and 1 green wrinkled seed out of 16.
Okay, so the ratio is if we have two phenotypes which have a dominant and recessive type, the 9 is dominant, so it has it's dominant for
All of it.
all of it, so its phenotype is dominant for both alleles or both genes. The 2 3s are each dominant for one of the genes and recessive for the other in terms of phenotype, and of course the 1 shows the recessive phenotype for both genes. So that's what a dihybrid cross is. I'm glad you all understand so well. So now we get to talk about what Vikram wanted to talk about last week. Oh, first, before we get to that, what is independent assortment? Warren.
So like two genes don't necessarily have to be inherited at the same time. To the same zygote.
Okay, good. So just because a parent has 2 genes, it doesn't mean it gets both of them to a given zygote. Since every parent has 2 copies of each gene, the copies don't necessarily stay together. They can go different ways if they're on different chromosomes, or if they're on the same chromosome. So that's independent assortment and our dihybrid cross. All right. So to put it in terms of how this is written right here, The law of independent assortment states that when gametes form, each pair of hereditary factors segregates independently of the other pairs. I think actually you said zygote, but you should have said gamete. A zygote
Oh,
is
wait,
made
right.
when two gametes meet,
Yeah.
right? An egg or a sperm is a gamete. A fertilized egg is a zygote. Okay. So this is simple. These ratios are simple probability, and you all understand simple probability, right? Please, Avi, please tell me anytime if there's something you want us to re-go over and such. We're flexible. Okay. Probability such. Multiplication. Okay, so let's say there's a 1/5 chance that a bird will have a blue head and a 1/10 chance that will have a blue body. What's the likelihood that it has both a blue head and a blue body?
Ew.
Sachi. 1/50th, right? So these are two independent probabilities, so we multiply them together. What's the probability that has a blue head and a non-blue body?
Wait, is blue body?
Ach.
What question?
Yes.
Oh wait, no.
So blue body is
Blue body is-
1/10 and
So
blue
now
head
it's
is
9 times, so 1 times 9 and then 5 times, wait. Yeah, so like
Big
9 over.
9/50ths?
Yes. Yes. So right, we multiply these two probabilities, which are 9/10 times 1/5 is 9/50ths. What if let's think what's an additive probability? Okay. What if it has a 1/5 chance of being blue and a 1/5 chance of being yellow and a 1/5 chance of being something else? What's the chance of, alright, let's say it has a 1/3 chance of each of the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. What's the probability that it's red or blue? 2/3, right? It's additive. So we add these two probabilities because they are dependent on each other. It's one or the other. What are you looking at? Doesn't look like academic research.
Yeah, what are we looking at? What do you think? She's talking to you.
Dan, when you turn your head to the left, please.
What?
Warren, would you do me a favor and take out his earbud? Is there a reason you always use your right ear?
You should use Austin with his spy camera.
The other one's broken. Well, that's fine by me.
You should
Uh,
use Austin with
I
his
think
spy
it's
camera.
genetics, maybe he had a 1/4 chance of having a broken left ear.
It
and
doesn't
a
work.
1/4 chance of a broken right ear.
Yeah.
his ears aren't broken though.
Yeah, they are. You don't know that, are you assuming so?
Am I what?
you assuming?
I'm not assuming, I'm saying I know. I'm omniscient.
You
What
know.
do you know?
You don't
So
know, you
you're
don't know
certain.
what he's thinking.
There's a reason I'm teaching biology. Because I know
So you're telling me this.
absolutely everything. I'm telling you that ear works. I think you said your earbud
I
works.
think it's 41.
No ear, bro.
Oh, I see. Okay,
What's
naturally.
41 squared?
41 squared. I'm talking about biology.
What?
But I'll tell you.
Wait, what if
Wait, hold on. 41 squared is 1681. Okay,
What? 22? What?
we're demonstrating our ability to stay off topic. Here we go. Moving on. So, we just talked about these.
Academic research.
Please put your phones away.
Yay. Code
I do have the
algorithms.
power to confiscate.
Incomplete.
Oh my god, actually,
Yes.
other people
Where's
do
your
that.
search warrant?
Well,
And then
I tried.
I actually only want to review like the first two. Incomplete. and-
Alright, well, I'm telling the whole class. It's not just for you, so we're actually
No,
gonna.
This is a personal one-on-one lesson for him.
Okay, so
Don't worry, you guys will get the lesson after I do.
Alright.
you all know that things can be dominant or recessive, right? So generally, something that's dominant is dominant because your body expresses a trait, and if it's recessive, it doesn't. So, for example, when your eyes are blue, the reason they're blue is because they don't have pigment in them. But when your eyes are brown, it's because they have pigment. So, if you have 2 alleles for blue eyes, your eyes don't make any pigment. But if you have 1 allele for brown eyes and 1 allele for blue eyes, the 1 allele, the 1 copy of your gene, makes enough pigment to make your eyes brown. That's why it's dominant. So that's why your eyes won't be blue if you have a brown allele. Yes, Warren.
So is it allele for like albino dominant?
No, it's the opposite. It's recessive because the other allele is making pigment, and if 1 allele is making pigment, you won't be completely albino at the very least.
What if it was like dominant?
What if it were like dominant? Well, then if you had one, then you would be albino. But do I look albino?
What's wrong?
I think he made colorblind. But if you think about it, right, what is albinism? Being albino means it's not just making white, it's not making any pigment across your whole body. So that's why,
What?
that's the reason why albino people are have white skin, is because their body isn't making any pigment. And so if they had 1 allele for making pigment, then they wouldn't be albino. Alright?
Yeah.
So, the reason I introduced that just now is because we're talking about incomplete dominance. So sometimes, neither of 2 alleles are dominant. You have enough to share for the whole class?
I do, but I don't.
What does that mean?
It's my last one.
Well, I gave you Jolly Ranchers last time, so I like some.
Wait, actually, I'll give you 1.
That's fair.
No, actually, you can have 2. You can have 2 Jolly Ranchers.
Fair trade. You give me the colors you don't like.
Actually, you can have blue. It's like the best color.
Alright. This is the principle of equal opposite and equal reactions. Somebody else want them? I put my hands
I'll take it.
Alright, if you guys
Make door to my
I'll
mouth.
take
can eat them. Please put away it. Actually, no, I changed my mind. I let Thomas eat chips. This
Yeah.
is fair. You can bring your own.
I'll just eat it in front of everyone.
I ate popcorn on Friday, no one noticed.
I didn't make Thomas shirts.
Oh, I did.
Wait, what?
Alright, back on topic.
You make glue sticks?
Those aren't yours. If you bring your own glue stick, you may eat it.
I have a mistake.
So, this is an example of incomplete dominance, where if this flower has two different alleles which are incompletely dominant, then the phenotype is neither the dominant nor the recessive phenotype. That's not yours.
Yeah,
Oh yeah? Well, go ahead. I won't stop
We've
you.
not been doing stuff today.
Non-toxic. That means it's
Wait, they're recording.
They are.
What?
Let this be known on camera that Warren, of his own volition, is eating a glue stick. And this explains his troubles in class.
Cosmo, he did.
I'm doing pretty well with this class.
Alright,
Not in chemistry, but like
okay.
This is not
Okay.
as low.
Let's get on topic here. Everyone, quiet. So, what did I just say about incomplete dominance?
glue
On.
sticks are no.
I'm gonna say it again while you guys are quiet so you guys can hear me and understand. If something has 2 different alleles and the phenotype is neither one, so it's neither dominant nor recessive, then we call this codominance. This happens because each allele individually makes part of their phenotype, but not the entirety of it. So in this case, what's likely happening is the P generation, right? They're true breeding, which means they're homozygous for their trait. Their offspring are pink, even though they were red and white. So can anybody think of a reason why this might occur? Based on what I've already told you? Yeah.
Maybe adding one allele for pigment, one allele where there's no pigment at all, maybe it's not enough to create enough pigment to make the whole thing like red, or not enough to make it white, so it's kind of.
That's a good answer. Yeah,
Could it be not exactly half, like 75%?
probably. I don't see why it would have to be exactly half. It's hard to imagine it wouldn't be exactly half. I mean, what is half? Like, there's all sorts of traits that you can't really measure half of.
Oh wait,
What is
then
half, right?
technically, could like everything be incomplete dominance because it could be 99%?
Well, perhaps technically, but not effectively. But also, a lot of times, a single allele will code for more than enough, and your body will down-regulate. So even though the allele can code for more than necessary, the body will limit its production of something. So in this case, Vikram's explanation is correct. In this case, a single red allele will code for the production of a red color, but not enough to make it actually look red. Just enough for it to look kind of red, which is why it's pink. And you all know pink isn't actually a single wavelength of light, right? There's no color pink in the rainbow, and that's because pink is a mix of red and white. So if you have a single photon, it can't be pink.
Color.
What if you color it? It has a color. The color of a proton is determined by
What
its
if you
wavelength.
capture a photon?
There is no single wavelength of a photon that looks pink.
What if you capture a photon and then you
Make
like,
it
paint it pink?
You can't paint a photon pink.
What if you make it pink?
What if you dump like paint on it?
Then what's making the color? I'll tell you, it's not the photon.
But it's still pink.
It's not pink. The paint is pink. The photon is the photon. You guys are being deliberately obtuse.
Obtuse triangles, geometry.
So in this
I know
case, right? In this case, we don't have a 3-to-1 ratio of dominant to recessive phenotype. Instead, we have a 1 to 2-to-1 ratio of dominant, codominant recessive
I
phenotype.
said 1 to 1. But.
Huh?
It's a car. It's fast.
What?
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's talking about how cars are fast.
Oh, thanks, Thomas.
Wait,
Yes.
shouldn't if it's two red alleles, and the two white, shouldn't that technically not be dominant and recessive?
Well, you're right. I misspoke. It's not dominant, codominant, recessive. It's dominant, codominant. Or it's 1, 2, and 2. It's all, it's a matter of how you say it. It's semantics.
What's semantics?
We're not going to talk about this because
Academic
this is a biology class. Yeah.
Academic research.
Do you want to look up the definition of semantics? You can
How
do
do you
that.
My phone's really slow, it takes a while.
No, I'll give you 15 seconds.
Wait, I don't.
Thomas, please count for
It's
us.
a race against time. Wait, things are loading.
15, 14, 13, 12.
No, that's not 15 seconds. Alright, wait, what's the
I
word?
can't type.
Look at the clock. You go to 11.
Oh, I think I got it.
Yeah.
It's just not loading. I just spelled it wrong.
I think it's the
7,
I can do
Okay.
this.
5,
The branch
3,
of linguistics and logic concerned with meaning. There are a number of
Alright, that's
branches.
enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was gonna put my weight. No.
Please put your phones away.
time.
Stop.
Okay, so you guys you understand this ratio. It's 1 to 2 to 1. Incomplete dominance. Get out of here. What's going on? Okay. So now we're going to talk about codominance. That was incomplete dominance. But this is codominance. This is where both alleles are completely expressed. in heterozygous individuals. So, in the case of blood cells, if something has an A allele, it has. Do you know what blood types mean? What is a blood type?
Oh yeah, we did that.
What's a blood type, Dan?
Wait,
It's
I have a
what type
question.
of blood you
Yes.
Like I know how to do like the A, B, A, B, O, but like what about the positive and all that?
The positive is actually just like the same as A, B, and O. There's actually multiple of these, which I'll talk about in just a second. Yes, Vikram. What's a
So
blood
like
type?
the A, B, and O, basically like each type, basically it has like these things that I don't know how to explain it exactly because I have no idea what they are. I should probably do some academic research on it, but essentially it's what allows it to be compatible to its own blood type. If another blood type comes in, it's
Yeah.
the opposite. Bad things happen.
So each of these letters represents a protein that's put on the outside of your blood cell that allows other cells to recognize it as yours. And so A and B are both of types of these, and there's actually more, and those include what used to be called the rhesus factor, the Rh factor, which is the positive or negative. And positive just means presence, negative means absence. And in this case, O also means absent. That's why you can't be AO or BO. Well, you are AO or BO. The O just means neither. So if you have AO, that means you're A blood type because you have A proteins on the outside of your blood cells. And if you have B, you have B proteins on the outside of your blood cells. And if you're AB, you have both. It's not half of either, but both of them, which is why it's considered codominant instead of incomplete dominance. And if you're O, so O is recessive to both A and B. So if you have AO, O is the recessive phenotype and A is the dominant phenotype. If you have B and O, B is dominant and O is recessive, but A and B are incomplete. Sorry, codominant. Thank you.
Could you have co-recessive?
Where neither shows up if it's heterozygous?
Yeah.
I suppose so, but I think generally since recessive alleles are the lack of something, it's hard for me to imagine two different recessive alleles. It's quite possible one of those exists, but it's hard to look through my omniscient mind to find that fact.
You can look through your phone. Or
We can
go
do it.
through our phone.
No, we're not going to do that right now.
Or we
We'll do
can
that
look through your phone.
later. Unlikely. So, what's the difference between codominance and incomplete dominance?
That's
Sarah.
The codominance is basically if two What's incomplete dominance again?
Huh?
What's incomplete dominance again?
So incomplete is when it neither completely happens.
Oh, okay. So basically, codominance is when there's two two types of dominant alleles.
And what happens if you're heterozygous for
Then both work.
then both work? Okay. So what's incomplete dominance?
When both of them were like what they usually are.
Alright. I'll give it to you.
I bet that you did have them.
I choose.
I get two.
Wait a minute. Did you answer questions at the beginning? No.
Here's the
Those not count.
What about the questions in the beginning?
Would you like to? Would you like to?
What about them?
I'm suddenly interested.
I'd like to offer
You should
you.
technically get credit for that.
Can I answer the next question?
That really changed our previous knowledge.
Did I ever set any kind of guidelines about when I would give them today?
That's
No,
true.
Yes.
I did not.
That's true.
You set the
Next year.
precedent for last class.
This is not the Supreme Court.
But you gave it to
I don't
me.
have to obey precedent. I can do whatever I want because I'm your teacher.
But you
But
tried.
that's
you
called a
think
tyranny,
it's
not a
good for
tyranny.
This classroom is not a democracy, believe it or not. Yes.
Communism.
You have to share your comic
This
answers.
is not a communist.
Our
comic
answers.
Alright, that's enough.
How is calculating punishment?
I will distribute Jolly Ranchers as I see fit, as king of this class.
Yeah, what?
But that's not a tyranny, that's a monarchy.
My brother is the
I'm a
minority of
tyrannical
one
monarch.
like the very, very lowest minority.
Okay, so I mentioned before, like things like height are not determined by a single gene. So these things are called polygenic, right? You can understand that. Poly means multiple. What's another word we talked about in class that has poly in front of it?
Polynomial.
Over.
Polymer, yeah.
And over the
Like
Jolly Ranchers.
I refuse to.
Polynomial.
Polynomial, that's a good one.
What?
I'm getting so much
Polymer?
participation now. She already said polymer.
That's not high polymer. But that's what I was saying.
High polymer?
Yeah, it's an
An
eraser.
eraser brand? Alright.
Oh,
On.
Polytheistic.
That's a good one.
I'm a polyatheist actually.
Oh, you believe in multiple lacks of God. That's very interesting. So can you tell us about how co-recessive genes might work with your understanding of polyatheism?
So
Actually, please don't. We gotta talk about
This is technically a communist society because we pay. Price tag.
but we're
Yeah,
not
that's
paying
capitalism. It's capitalism.
The life
Try again. Okay, for the sake of teaching you something, I'm going to have you all stop talking. Thank you. So, polygenic traits are traits that are determined by multiple genes. I'm taking a photo of this chart.
I'm taking a photo of the chart. I don't like it.
With one point.
Are you trying to demonstrate that you're in the upper decile of height for your age? That may not be
See where
true.
Thomas falls.
Okay,
I want this.
that's cold. Alright,
I'm written this zero.
so polygenic traits can be.
I'm not in-
Do you guys remember discrete versus continuous? Reno, what's the difference between discrete and continuous? You forgot. Alright, I'll tell you. Oh yeah.
Like, discrete is like polar words versus continuous being like that.
Oh, very good.
Wait a minute.
Don't you
Wait,
remember
that means
the
I've never
first-
done that one.
Why?
You don't like me.
Did I ever say that on?
No.
It's showing interaction.
Okay. My biggest thing is people asking for them. How dare you?
Oh, we are
And
asking
I'm
for
not
demand.
I want demanding your silence if you want.
Is that
That means we
extortion?
can't answer questions.
Is that extortion? Wait, that's.
Alright, minus.
Wait, what? I was just wondering if it was, but I
It's not extortion. It's offering a reward.
Oh, okay. Now I know.
Alright, so type of. Okay, so epistasis is.
Well, I know an example of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like golden retrievers, like they're not actually, they don't have a pigment expressed in their hair.
Uh-huh.
It's another allele that stops the pigment from getting released.
Oh, okay. So in this case, epistasis is one gene controls a different gene. So he's just talked about golden retrievers. The example here is about Labradors. So there is already a gene that expresses the color, and another gene controls how the first gene is expressed. Can you imagine how a gene
Is that a question?
Did I finish it? It will be a question when I'm done. Can you imagine how a gene could control for another gene's expression? Yeah, Vikram.
Maybe like the protein it forms could be like I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm not expecting a perfect answer. I'm just asking if you can imagine a way. Yeah.
Maybe like the protein, blocks the protein from like exiting
Oh.
wherever it should go.
Okay, so maybe it's making a protein that inhibits like translation.
Or maybe it destroys the protein.
Which protein does it destroy?
Or the protein that, like in the Labradors or the triggers or whatever, the protein that stops the pigment from getting released and destroys the pigment.
So I'm glad you guys understand that proteins are involved, but so proteins are involved all sorts of places, right? In initiating transcription, right? Binding to the TATA box in transcription, or actually doing the transcription with like the RNA synthase, or maybe with dealing with the pre-mRNA to take out the introns, or many other possibilities. So we can imagine that one gene can code for proteins that affect how the other proteins work, which can change how other genes are expressed. All right. Okay.
Wait, stop. Stop.
Okay. Not the whole thing.
Okay.
Is that it?
So in this example, yeah.
I did it.
What did you do?
I got one.
You stole it from Warren.
I traded.
Okay, fair enough.
Would you like to trade?
We'll talk about economics later. Okay. So in this case, right, all these Labradors have the gene for the pigment that's in their fur, but the Labradors that have this B allele produce the black coat. With the recessive allele, they produce the brown coat, and then that's the pigment coat, and the second one determines how the melanin or the pigment gets into the fur itself. So in this case, the protein is actually, I think, bringing the pigment into the fur somehow, and so recessive will mean it brings none of the pigment to the fur, which is why they turn out
Or
yellow.
it could be like, if it's recessive, like, it doesn't produce a protein that brings the.
It could be. I just said that because it said whether eumelanin is deposited. I don't know.
Or maybe kind of like what Warren said, except instead of like not having protein being produced, maybe protein just sits there and doesn't do anything. Maybe it's like prevented from moving.
Okay, so it can be inhibited, perhaps, or maybe it can be degraded. Maybe the protein's still made, but another enzyme breaks it down quickly. Okay, so that's epistasis. So in this case, there's two genes that are controlling the pigment color. So we can recognize that if it's recessive for this E gene, no matter what, if it's homozygous recessive, no matter what, it turns out to have yellow fur. But if it has one copy of that dominant E allele, then it will have brown or black fur depending on what the other gene says. Does everybody follow along with that?
Oh.
Austin, do you get it?
Yeah.
Okay. Jess? Thomas? Rena? Alright. Okay. Pleiotropy. Sometimes one gene can affect many things. There's no reason why it should only affect one thing. So that gene that we just talked about, the E gene that affects where the melanin goes, not only does it affect the fur, but it also affects the eyes. So that's called pleiotropy. Okay. So, what kind of alright. Okay, so for a Jolly Rancher, what is epistasis? Amish.
Like when one gene controls another.
When one gene controls another. Good enough. Okay, Sophic, what is pleiotropy?
When one gene controls other genes.
No. Try again.
Actually,
That's epistasis, right? What's pleiotropy?
actually no.
When one gene
Trying to
affects,
spread the wealth here.
when
Vikram.
one gene affects other genes.
No.
When one gene affects other genes that are not related to this gene. So for example, fur color affecting eye color.
No. Not exactly.
But is it
Jeff.
when one gene affects multiple traits?
Yeah. Right. So it's not about affecting other genes in this case. Pleiotropy is one gene affecting multiple traits.
Is that
Alright. Thank you, Vikram. I appreciate
I
your
would have
honesty.
given it to him anyways. You guys talking?
I would have appreciated your honesty if you gave it to him also. But in this case,
We
Vikram,
don't know that. Are you assuming things?
I'm assuming my own behavior. Yes. Okay. There are also cases where there's more than two kinds, where there's more than just recessive and dominant, right? We saw that example in blood types. In this case, there are multiple alleles possible for this chinchilla fur color. And it's not, in this case, it's not epistasis. It's not like codominance or incomplete dominance, but there are actually 4 different alleles that can be present in their fur, right? We have this recessive, well actually it's not. So we have a dominant allele for pigment, and if it can be black. We have this other pigment, or other allele, which is denoted by this superscript, CH, and this one with the superscript H, and then we have the recessive one. So we can see that the recessive one is albino, the dominant one is very dark, but these other alleles make other colors, and I'm not sure what it would look like if it were heterozygous for these alleles. It could be interesting. Alright. So, you guys know the phrase, what's the phrase we use to talk about the difference between environment and
Nature and nurture.
true? It's nature versus nurture. So, this is something you're very familiar with. People change or animals change throughout the season. Cats shed their fur.
Character development.
Huh?
Character development.
What? Throughout the season.
Is that are
Throughout its season.
you talking about like a TV show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, character development.
Alright, fair enough. But also, your dogs might shed their fur during the summer.
Character development.
In this case, Arctic foxes turn white during winter. Also, some rabbits in the Arctic turn white during winter. So do ptarmigans, which are like a wild dove. So gene expression depends on the environment also. Can somebody who has yet to receive a Jolly Rancher,
I can receive it directly.
can somebody who has yet to receive a Jolly Rancher imagine a way that the environment could control gene expression?
Yes, I can imagine a way.
Sach, alright, Tom, do you have your hand up?
Sure, why not?
Sure. Why not?
So if it's for example, the Arctic fox, since it's right there, it would shed its fur after winter is over, because if it has all that thick fur, then it will probably overheat and die
Uh-huh.
in the summertime, which is the environment influencing its fur.
Well, that's a good evolutionary reason, so I'll give you one. Thomas, can you give us
Can I exchange this? It's cherry.
you don't like cherry? I have to use all of these. If you know,
Maybe we'll trade out. I'll have it.
Thomas, so what kind of genetic reason could potentially explain this?
And the fox.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like they have a gene. Basically, what she said, they have a gene that like it's like when it's like it turns white during the winter.
so then it can't be spotted, and that way like it can like sneak up more. And then during the summer, it's like more brown, so it can blend in with the like bushes and branches and stuff.
Alright, that was a more specific evolutionary reason, so I'll give it to you.
Wait,
But
I
I'm
have-
looking for a genetic reason.
Well, I have something for like humans. So,
Okay.
like, at home, they can act whatever way they want, and then like when they go to like school or something, they have to act more calm because like of social.
Alright. That's a little different. You can't just act like you're white and then suddenly have all your fur be white. I realize that came out slightly different than Vikram.
Maybe like somehow like in their genes maybe through like natural selection or something. It's I guess it's more evolutionary as we speak.
Can anyone imagine like a genetic mechanism, specifically how the genes work? I'll tell you.
Oh,
Yeah.
so maybe like one protein that is produced might like not do well in warm environments. So like maybe like those
These are the same fox. So
yeah
like in the town.
no.
the genes are kind of like co-dominant, but like during the winter, because one of the proteins doesn't do well in cold environments, so it kind of gets degraded. So only one of the proteins is expressed, and then the opposite for the summer.
Interesting.
Maybe it's like depending on time.
It is depending on time. It's winter or summer, but how so? How does it? All right. I'm just okay. Vikram.
Alright, so like what Warren said, let's say the two coats are co-dominant, right? So in summer maybe like it sheds off the white fur, but underneath the brown coat, underneath it is like a growing layer of maybe like white fur. So then when the time comes and it's winter time again, it sheds off the brown fur and underneath you have
Okay.
more white fur.
That seems like a good explanation potentially. What I was kind of looking for was rather how gene expression is affected. So when, for example, you can imagine that when it's winter, either because of the temperature or actually some animals use the length of the day as how it affects them. When these certain things occur, they turn on or turn off of genes using other genes to affect how they express their genes that produce the brown fur or the white fur. So when it's cold and they shed, or I'm not sure if it's the cold, the temperature or the day length or what, but during the winter time, a certain gene turns on that produces white fur and the gene that's producing brown fur turns off or something like that. And vice versa in the summer. Yeah.
I mean, considering that it's white fur, I mean, you could just turn off the fact that the pigment is being produced.
That's quite possible, yeah. Maybe there's another gene to make it shed in the, well, I'm sure there is. Alright. Vikram, have you gotten into all your entry yet? Alright. Alright. Meiosis. Why don't these people look identical?
Meiosis.
Meiosis, yes.
Mutations.
Not necessarily.
Well, mutations are like the
Historically, yes.
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So, meiosis is when a cell with, like a full adult cell with two copies of a gene divides and becomes two different cells that each have one copy of their gene, which is what we call haploid. So diploid, the di means two, right? So a diploid cell has two copies of its genes.
The daughter cells.
A haploid cell has one copy.
Wait, then shouldn't it
The
be like
daughter
monoploid?
Monoploid. I'm not sure the etymology of
Because like
haploid.
if you have two copies of a gene and it's diploid, that means diploid means well di means two, and then you have haploid, but it's one copy.
That's right. I'm not sure what the origin of that
Or maybe
HA.
it could be polyploid because you're producing four
Polyploidy is a thing. Yes, actually. Polyploidy is a very real thing, but we're not going to talk about it right now. So we understand. So eggs and sperm in humans are made through meiosis. So we have we have reproductive organs, and they make cells that undergo meiosis to make our haploid cells, which are our what are haploid cells?
Half cells.
No.
Gamete.
Yes, gametes, right? Okay. So, why do we need meiosis? Well, it's helpful for evolution to have children that are different than you, because variation allows for
Protection against cancer.
protection against chemistry.
Cancer.
Maybe. I mean, you can imagine a lot of reasons why variation is useful, because you can have offspring who are better adapted to deal with certain things.
It's kind of sad when you're offspring are better than you. Like, you need to be the best, right?
But although you might imagine now that it's best to be the best, it's actually even better to be the adult with the best children. You'll learn that someday. How old do you think I am?
23.
21.
23.
You can get a job.
Yeah, 24.
Okay, fine.
24.
Too young. Too
You
young.
look like you
Too young to pay too much attention. 20. What do you say?
Hey, I got 2 watermelons. You have 2 grapes.
Wait, what did he say?
Wait, what's the right answer?
Wait, what did he
Thomas,
say?
what did you do?
I said you have 2 grapes.
No,
24.
20. I got 23.
I was gonna say too young to
I
pay
said 25.
sports concert.
Wait, so does that mean you can dream? Can I borrow your ID?
No.
Because you look
I'll
alike.
trade 1 for 1.
Oh, okay.
Trade 1 for 2.
But that's good.
Alright.
That's not a big deal.
Okay. Also, it's helpful for these cells to be light. Our DNA takes up a large part of us, our cells, and
Also,
but cells can actually be significantly lighter if they have less genetic information. Okay, so when meiosis occurs, it's not just that they get one of everything or half, but rather the things are mixed up, so they don't always get the same half, which is why what occurs? Independent assortment, right? So independent assortment occurs because of meiosis. So this independent assortment occurs, and also something called crossing over. So independent assortment. Hey, what's going on? Austin, what's going on in front of you?
He's a spy camera.
Nothing. You're a terrible.
Bribery.
All right. So.
Stop robbing a spy
So
camera.
independent assortment is the phenomenon where all the chromosomes don't stay together, right? So you get one set of chromosomes from your parents and another from another set of parents, but when you have kids,
So there's 4 parents. Being set is 2.
okay, you get one set of chromosomes from one parent and another set from another parent, but those chromosomes don't stay together, and that process is called independent assortment. But another aspect,
Wait. The result is what?
the result is independent assortment. Well, also the process of them being assorted independently. So another thing that occurs is called crossing over, and what this is when chromosomes mix with each other and exchange the alleles on each chromosome. So you have two chromosomes. You have 46 chromosomes, but you have 2 sets of each chromosome, and these chromosomes will trade the alleles on each one of them sometimes. So this is why even though you may have inherit 2 genes or on the same chromosome from one parent, your offspring may not necessarily have both those genes on the same chromosome. They may have a different allele. Okay, does that make sense? Hopefully it will make more sense in a bit when we talk more.
Can we skip meiosis?
No. Who is a master of meiosis already? No, we're not skipping meiosis. There's not enough people. This is not mastery. You can't say I'm kind of a master. Either you are or you aren't. So, first, what happens, right? we start with a pair of chromosomes. Then in meiosis, these chromosomes get copied, so you have 2 copies of them. Then your cell splits into 2, so it has one double chromosome in each of these daughter cells, and those split again. So eventually you end up with 1 chromosome in all of them. So this is diploid and this is haploid. What's that?
Monoploid.
No, right here we have
Oh,
2.
wait.
That's
Oh,
diploid. This is this is haploid. What is this one?
Diploid.
This is diploid also, right? Because there's 2. What about this one though?
What's the prefix you use for ploid?
Tetra.
Tetra.
It's a tetraploid or a polyploid.
Oh yeah, so it is.
Why not monoploid or something?
Probably because of the language of origin.
Quad is usually used unless you're.
Well, actually, I don't know. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. We start with a parent cell, right? The chromosomes meet in the middle, and then they get separated. So first we have a chromosome, and it doubles, right? And actually now it has it's tetraploid, and then it divides, and now it turns into 2 different cells, or it divides, and now each one of these is a double copy of a chromosome, and then it divides one more time, a 4th time, in order to make 4 gametes, which each have 1 single copy of each chromosome. Science is humorous. Alright, okay, we're gonna do a little worksheet.
What? Wait, what?
What?
Okay then, let's do it. Wait, for my sheet.
A worksheet. Can you believe it?
Would you have to like
Time to finally get to that
listen
salon.
to answer the worksheet?
Perhaps.
Thomas doesn't like people for my sheet.
What was that?
Now that you're asking, we're not gonna get it.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you because Victor's talking. One more time.
Why
You
should
finish
I
your
get
part?
an extra Jolly
Go for it.
Rancher for even suggesting the idea?
We suggested it Monday. The time is fast. Your
Isn't
reward
it
for
Monday?
I
suggesting.
didn't suggest
Actually-
it on Monday. I suggested it on Saturday.
Well, that means your time is
Thursday.
forecast.
Saturday, Thursday.
I don't know. What
Consider this, your reward for suggesting them is that you got any. Because if you didn't, there wouldn't be. How's that? You're underwhelmed, huh?
How about writing utensil?
A writing utensil. Well, I can loan you a writing utensil.
Actually? Can I help with the Jolly Rancher?
Nah.
Oh,
I don't know. Alright. Okay, what period is this?
This is period Avery.
Okay. How do you spell that?
Use your imagination.
Son. For Dan, that's not humanly
If
possible.
I'm,
You just
offended,
did
if I'm offended by your alternate spelling, I'll give you a minus.
What if you're
Jolly
impressed
If I'm impressed, I might
by
give
how
you.
wrong it is?
You know, impressing me always leads to positive results.
Good answer.
My
Okay. In some chickens, the gene for feather
mine is here.
Oh my god. Explain the difference between incomplete and codominant.
If you need help, you may talk to your partner sitting next to you.
What side, left or right?
What do you think? These are critical thinking skills.
Oh, that's pretty wrong.
What's
Yeah.
a rowan?
Where are you looking?
Boston,
What's rose?
A roan bull and a roan cow. I think it's a color.
Wait,
When you find it on Wiki.
wait, how are you supposed to tell which one's dominant? If they don't give you any.
That's a good question. Oh, look at that. So
Well, we found it.
roan is an example of incomplete dominance.
Wait, this is codominant.
So a roan bull is an incompletely dominant bull.
Oh, okay.
We can imagine if bulls can be like red or white, I think roan is the heterozygous.
Wait, but it doesn't tell me the other colors, so do I just like think of a color?
I just said red and white.
Oh, okay.
So a roan is like a spotted cow, a red and white, like a white cow spotted with red, or vice versa.
Oh, and also which one's dominant, red or white?
It's co-dominant.
Oh yeah,
That's why it's roan.
right.
Whoa, wait. I wasn't there yet, so what's your other?
Red and white. A roan cow is a cow with a red and white allele. That makes
So it's
it,
just like RW for both.
it's RW,
Wait, what do bulls and cows make?
either a bull or a cow.
A bow.
Little
Well, I
bow.
imagine they would be cow if they lived in China and had prehensile thumbs. You knew that.
What?
What a bull is?
No, what do a bull and a cow make?
What do you mean, what do they make?
And they-
When they make offspring, they have a baby that turns into like a calf, right? And then it grows up into either a bull or a cow. Do you seriously think of that? You know like a donkey is like a horse, right? Not like a cow.
Power number 5.
Good question. I think 5 and 6 are basically the same question.
Or I guess you could answer 5 with calf or something if you want.
I actually answered like a few surprisingly.
Yeah.
Good. So,
Huh?
wait. Yeah, what is that? That's right, I screwed up one line.
They will look completely sure. This one is incompletely sure. So codominant
Wait, no, that's wrong. Wait, no. Is it 3 or 5? Yes. These results, how did you tell if that's what inherited? Is it recessive?
If it were recessive, what would the result be?
But like, okay, never mind.
What's my answer? What's my answer?
Why not? Embarrassing.
Yeah.
What?
Like,
I might cheat.
yeah.
What
sorry.
Where did you get pink from?
Pink is red and white, I think it's fine.
No, roan is red and white combined.
It's not.
So he was covering it for
The reason it's a roan, it's already the roan adults, right?
Well, if you have-
Is it back?
You know what?
He finished his arm first.
This is what a roan cow looks like.
Nice. No, it's
It's
red.
what it kind of looks like
Might as well already that.
I get very little respect for myself.
that's a compliment.
No.
That's not
It seems the head is more, and there's not some genetics there where the head is more, because it goes
But
this
that's
way.
not related to the roan cow. I think it's related to the color.
Wait. How does this
Because
Because it's a male. Right? The bulls don't have udders because they're male. Those are all female.
what is it?
So does a
Have
bull
you guys ever been to a farm?
No.
Yeah.
Good
Results a bull and a raw cow.
Did you
The
own
bull
one
with
of your
udders.
Did you own a bull in your
You are a strange bunch. Yes. There is no pink cow.
As long as.
Oh, for flowers, if you cross white and pink.
So what if you cross a pink flower and a cow?
No.
What?
Right, what do you remember what the genotype of the pink flower is? Well, it is RR, because the only letters are R, but remember that pink in this case is a codominant phenotype, right? And what's the phenotype of the white flower? Or what's the genotype of the white flower, right? Yeah.
It's always a map.
Cross a flower and a cow.
I'm getting less and less impressed with your intelligence. I take back whatever I said to Warren.
You still remember that?
How bad do you think my memory is? It's not a goldfish.
You are old.
You said goldfish.
Yeah, but like old people are back too.
Oh, and you think I'm 50, that's We should be thankful it's only 2 pages. The original worksheet was like 4.
4 whole pages.
And then I
I've
thought to
never done 4
myself,
pages in that way.
More than
That's like less than 5.
actually, I changed my mind. She was smarter than I
Whoa.
Edward's chemistry final is like 8 pages.
I'm just saying Dan was complaining that there was a second side.
I was complaining that I didn't know there was a second
Oh,
set.
okay. Fair enough.
You complete dominance?
Sorry, I don't understand anything. Do you want to help with anything?
makes sense.
Okay.
What?
So you know how to do number 4, right?
There you go.
It's a Punnett square.
You know Punnett square?
Is it everything like a Punnett?
Life is like a Punnett square. Punnett square is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
What was you?
Unless you look
I'll let you. I'll let you.
Warren, you look carefully at it.
It says combination of milk. Wait, but it says a combination of
very
milk,
depressing.
dark, and white chocolate. So
That movie
blindfold the open box, you never know what you're gonna get. So it's a blindfold.
She made a little chocolate, dark chocolate.
What if you change the circumstances? Then wouldn't the result be different?
So your blindfold is like cut open.
So it's not like, I see.
Yes, that's when you choose your own path. Whether you want to go down the dark chocolate path. Dang it.
What?
That sounded better than my head.
Getting down the path of like, a bunch of maniacs.
When they say you have two options, you take the middle road, which is milk chocolate.
Any comments? Or
Well,
just
look at
gonna
first.
Disclaimer, I probably got it wrong.
Of course.
Really interesting. So this is
Where?
It
It
has
isn't
four
a
sides.
Yeah.
What is the
using like
sides?
yeah, 7. Dude, I didn't get this. I was like, yeah. I don't know if the buttons looks like
It's the one, and you finish.
Yeah.
You take a look.
He needs it.
yeah, for comparing answers
Academic research.
on your paper.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, I misread this. Questions 5 and 6 are totally different.
What?
No. No, well, yeah,
Oh, well, like-
question 5 and 6 are not the same question.
number 6 is wrong.
It's different. What?
A red soul and a white cow. It's a red soul cow.
Based on what you know about number 5, you can use that in number 6 in that sense.
Can we get y'all markers?
Yeah, go ahead. Walk over to the store.
Oh. You thought?
I will distribute them as I see fit.
Okay, that's that.
I finished it and I fit.
Are you fit?
I'm ready to learn.
Wait, so we just dropped that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm once again ready to
Everything's
pick up my pencil and
just-
start writing notes. I'm once again ready to pick up my pencil and start writing notes.
Oh, that's great.
What? That was nice.
Your answer to 5 is not quite correct. And also, I'd like you to change your answer to 7, please. You showed the genotypes, but I'd like you to look at the question above it, which is how is it inherited? Let's look. Chill. Yes. Explain which one? Okay, so 6 is red and white, right? So it is, right? So what's the result? If we know that this is a codominant gene, that means we know their genotypes, so we know what the offspring will be.
So red and white are
Huh?
so red and white are
They're codominant, right? That's why the roan color is the thing. So roan is the heterozygous phenotype. So if that's the case, then that means at number 6, both the parents are homozygous for their color, right? And so what will their children be?
all the
Which means what color will they be? The color's not half and half.
Well, it's like
There's a
white
word for the
with
color.
red.
It's roan. Right?
Okay.
I'd like to point out, just to be nitpicky, that this is a ratio, not an actual number. Just, I mean, I don't want you to change your answer, but I want you to make sure you know that, right?
I'm done.
Okay, so how, for number 7, what's the mode of inheritance? Right, is it dominant recessive, is it incomplete dominance, or is it codominance?
Oh, that's
Not quite,
For what, which one?
or are you just?
I fixed it.
Are both of mine, so like if I'm brown, it's what is the other brown? Yeah.
Wait,
And
where am I?
then maybe it's some brown, the only three brown.
No, where am I? I think it's the one. That's what I did.
But
Is it right?
No, there's 6 for y doesn't
It's like, it's like, see, brown, it's maybe it's not, so it's brown.
And then I just kind of thought.
Brown, as we call it, is not a codominant gene, right? In this case,
And then using about, it's about the same as this ratio
Like you
given
have
to.
no tails.
Oh.
what are the genotypes of inheritance?
Because that's when they.
Right? We're
Oh.
only talking about, we're only looking at
Oh.
No, it's a codominant trait, it's about dominant or the opposite. Yes,
Fixed it.
Where do you get that?
well, no, I call it incomplete dominance, because, because the expressed trait, right, short, it's a short tail, is neither a long tail nor a no tail. Nice. Yeah.
But I kind of felt like this part.
Why do you guys ask me that? If this was a bad idea.
By everyone you
It's not a bad idea.
How many times did we ask you today?
Fine, I'll bring Jolly Ranchers on, I'll bring Jolly Ranchers on, Friday.
Will you?
Yeah, I have a packet home.
Next grade.
Oh, goodness.
That everyone's, that everyone.
I have a half even.
You have more grapes. Who wants the tray?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to try.
I want to.
Like, I made
No,
it.
by the time you guys.
Yeah, that's really just a process.
No, take care again.
I think he's right.
He already is such a problem.
Right?
Long tilt or stuff?
I finished mine,
No.
checked it.
Take something, do it, right?
I'll take
Right,
it. What do
So
you
there,
think?
if there are 3 genotypes, if there are 3 phenotypes,
Well, I got it.
I finished though.
May I trade once more?
I can't
Oh,
go for
there's-
everybody.
You downtraded.
I asked for his flavor of grade.
Man, y'all are some picky kids.
April, may I please
No.
trade flavor?
You can trade with other people.
I asked, may I please trade?
You may please trade with the other people who get a different flavor.
Oh, yeah, I got,
Fine.
Right.
This is your one
Oh,
trade.
she got 2 trades.
Avery, I never got the trade.
3.
She got 3 trades.
Isn't
I
she a
get
girl?
another one.
This is very Avery.
This is sexism.
Everyone
Like,
stop.
I think it's wrong.
She got 3
Why are you
trades.
assuming that I identify as a girl?
This is sexism.
I'm just gonna go with taking the break.
I can't look at Avery no more. This is sexist.
How do you?
I want to trade this.
I'll
break
trade you
now.
green apple for that.
I'm done, Avery.
I'll trade you.
Okay,
I'll trade you green apple for this.
okay, so for 7, what mode
I
of
still have
inheritance?
blackmail photos.
And by that, by mode of
Three
inheritance,
and
is it dominant, codominant, or is it incomplete dominant?
You have a problem. This guy already doesn't make the trade, no. Break.
This is power.
This is how you get rid of your
Yeah,
bad.
because,
I got this twice.
no, it's not quite code red.
Wait, no.
Because it doesn't have both long tail and no tail.
Avery.
Every time.
Can I have a trade? I'll bring my.
Right. With each other.
I don't like that.
I'll write you a good review.
I'll bring
I'll
half.
say Avery was
I'll
the
bring my half meter back.
What flavors do you want?
Blue. Everyone
Or
wants blue.
watermelon.
Everyone wants blue
Get
or
them
red.
cherry.
I'm okay with cherry, okay? So I'm
I hate cherry.
He's digging.
Why don't
I like it.
See, I'm not gonna ask for
Yeah, I'll randomly give you one, and then you
I'll
get
do
to
that.
take whatever that happens to.
Okay. Wait,
That's how it is.
Every,
I
I'm
got a few.
gonna give you a chance. Because I like watermelon.
You help me, you should have.
I like blue raspberry.
It doesn't get any better. For me, it doesn't get any worse than this. I'm just gonna give you a chance.
It doesn't have both, it's a combination.
Yeah.
We should have
Okay,
different,
but neither
just one,
completely.
a number for eight. That's
Do you
okay.
want a random
Yes,
color?
random color. Okay, I'm happy. I can finally go in.
You should look for people who want to trade with you, like maybe he.
Thomas is
would-
the only guy. Thomas is the only guy here that likes trade, but he has
Oh,
nothing to
watermelon?
trade.
Yeah, yes.
You don't like that color?
He's eating it. He's all
Okay, so can I help you with something?
You're learning to pass on places today?
She got the one.
Oh. No, we threw that apple away.
Is this a trash can?
It is. Are you not done?
Yeah, it's like a percent.
Okay.
It's why I have to take something
You can figure it out.
It's not, it looks like it's all your hands.
I have grape flavored Jolly Ranchers.
Okay, cool.
Anybody want to trade?
Where are those pills?
They're children's medication.
We'll go.
Don't believe me?
I do believe you. Is that zero tech?
Zero.
What the? No. Zerta comes in the little.
I have zero tech.
Who wants to trade grape?
Okay.
I'll grab my Aleve or
Sarah,
zero
can you
tech,
tell me
whatever.
what
I'll find
mode-
something
Make
else.
you fall
mode
asleep.
of character?
I'll grab my Tylenol. That's good.
Alright,
Do
now,
you accept liquidified medications?
I'd like you for 5 and 6
So
to
never
tell
mind
me
then.
the
I'm out of here.
proportions of the
Those
color
look like
of the Oscar.
A road calf.
They'll be
No, there was one that I had
Oh,
that tasted like orange.
That was actually Oh wait.
Pepto, how about Pepto? Pepto-Bismol
There's
tastes
a
like
genetic chicken.
Yeah, but the bird and donkeys are much more closely related and their offspring usually are We'll actually spend time talking about
genetic
This.
barriers. Are you done yet?
genetic
Are you done
barriers
yet? Are you
or
done yet? Are you done
other
yet? Are you
kinds
done
of
yet? Are you done
barriers.
yet? Are you done yet?
I did this.
You did this in Shinab, but you don't remember it?
Because we're not that closely related. And we are.
Wait, can I just put 3 minutes over?
Yeah.
You know what?
I do like it. I feel like you don't think
Yeah.
Wait, let me read you something.
You want my worksheet? I don't
You got to make
This is the,
You
this
can
is
take
my
it
favorite
all.
bus.
Sure, you're good. If you want. Okay,
Wait.
alright, now let me figure it out. Okay, everybody, please listen up.
Stop, man.
Wednesday, we do not have lab. We have lab on Friday instead.
Wait.
Why is this? It's because on Wednesday, there's another lab group who will be in the lab, so we're moving it to Friday. This means you don't need to wear long sleeves on Wednesday, but you do absolutely need them on Friday, or you won't be able to come to class. So
What exactly are we gonna
I'll
do?
send an email to you since you haven't been here, but you'll need long sleeves, you'll need long
Everything
pants,
long, everything
and
long.
toe and
I
heel
have a long
closed
streak
shoes.
on there.
Yeah, Warren.
And also you'll need to sign a safety
Waiver.
permission slip. So actually, before you leave on your way out, there's a waiver at the front desk, so I'd like you to pick one up and then have your parents sign it and bring it.
Wait, do you want to have to make your food
also, yeah, well, she's doing it anyway, but you have to put your hair up in the lab. Okay. You may go if you're finished. If you wanna come complain about Jolly Ranchers to me,
I shall get this for further reference. You better hurry up, big boy.
no.
I'll give you that.
Oh, thank you.
But you're gonna piss me
Huh?
off so much, I'm gonna have to.
Well, I'm glad.
I'll bring my other pack that has 10 Jolly Ranchers in it if I get another one.